Meeting to order. It's 3 o'clock. Public notice having been duly given and quorum being present. Yes, the meeting is duly constituted. First order on the agenda is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion for approval, please? Thanks. Second. Discussion? I have nothing. Everybody good? Okay, all in favour? Opposed and carried. So the agenda is good to go. Public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes of April 21 on page 3. Motion to adopt, please. Thank you. And second, any discussion?
Is that talking about action points?
Not yet.
No, that'll come in matters arising. Okay. No further discussion. All in favour of adoption? Opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Business arising. Action items report, page 9.
We should, before we do the action items report, which is new, and I'll speak to it in a minute, we should go through the action items which are in the minutes.
Okay, is that done now or is that done in
Yes.
unfinished
Yep,
biz?
that's done now.
No,
Matters
okay.
arising.
Okay, let's do that then. So we'll just start at the beginning. First action item is under 7 on page 4 of 56.
Right, so that's still in progress.
That's still in progress,
Yeah.
yes.
Both
I
of
managed to
those.
reconcile based on the many hearsay numbers and why is this and why is that numbers I've been hearing for 2 years. I can reconcile to the numbers exactly, so I'm very pleased with the report. Pam, would you mind just, you responded and I glanced at it, but I didn't actually absorb the answer about the public works time that was spent emptying the storage building here. We don't capitalise.
No, we don't. It's not our practice to capitalize the time. Any materials purchased would be capitalized, but not the time. So it would just be an expense. Part of the reason is it's kind of a gray area in terms of whether it's genuinely TCA. So if we did put it to the project, chances are at the year end we have to remove it anyway for purposes of the financial statements. But it is something we could look at, particularly when we get the work order system. It's easier to track the time.
My driver is I want people to able to look at the report and say, this is what the whole cost is. And when I first saw that happening, as speaking as a civilian, I said, oh, okay, that's where we're going to save some money on the final report because we're going to use public works time rather than contractors to empty the storage shed. So even speaking for myself, I would like to see that. I want to know what this whole cost.
Right. Yeah, we'll just have to be careful then in terms of trying to reconcile it to what was reported to the government. Would be the conflict because we couldn't put that time in there. So we will get different totals for the cost. So the flip, I totally see why it's good to show all the costs, but on the other hand, you don't want to give the appearance that we're trying to hide things by having different totals.
No, that's true. Although, I mean, I know, having just signed several checks, 3 at least, this last session, they couldn't have been accounted for because there were things that had obviously just arisen. I can't remember what they are, to be honest.
Right, but they would have been included in that total that we had in the budget this year for the 88,000. Even though we hadn't paid them, we had totaled all the costs.
To the extent, I can't remember what they were, but anyway, the point is, yeah, it's a chicken and egg situation, obviously.
We might be able to do it with a narrative.
Yeah, maybe a
total,
narrative.
And then underneath saying this does not include public works time that we estimate to be approximately X dollars of value.
Fine, that's probably right. Okay, and Manny, what's the second point?
They're both in progress.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, then under B.
The first one is done.
First one's done. I can report to the rest of us on that one. John Dudley has fairly limited scope ideas on trail cleanup. He essentially wants to cut back brush with hedge clippers and secateurs. I had something a little more heroic in mind, specifically to do with fire risk. So we're talking about 2 separate projects. Whether we do the second part at all, I don't know yet, but it's not what John Dudley has in mind. He just wants to get rid of the brambles. So that was that.
Sorry.
So are you still thinking of
It's a separate project.
the bigger deal? And
Yeah, it's a separate project. It's not going to be under John's auspices if we decide to clean up Deadfall. If we do decide to clean up Deadfall, we will hear from your forestry people if they...
I phoned them again today. And
Okay.
yeah.
I'm sure they're a little busy. Yeah, I mean, my main concern with the trails is not so much fire risk as there is a tree that I took a picture of and sent you, that if you push on it,
I didn't get a
you
picture
can
of the
you can
tree.
hear it. It's a Dropbox link that I sent you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I sent it about 4 or 5 days ago. Just maybe check it out. It's probably there. If you press on it, you can hear the base creaking. It is that. I stopped pressing on it because I thought this may fall on me.
Is it on the left of the trail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a half-burned one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a sign on it saying this is a half-burned tree.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see the sign.
So are we no longer looking at doing June 20th?
No,
or just so I'm clear on what we're...
No, that's John Dudley's volunteer day, but it's going to be the secateurs and hedge clipper level stuff.
So he's on his own there.
No, well, unless I can expand the project. And
So is that something, just so I'm clear what I need to be doing with this, is that something you're working on with John, or...
no, I'm not working on it with John. You and I will need to work on it with Helen.
Okay.
And you took notes and you sent some
I did send them
stuff
out.
around,
Yeah.
and I haven't even got to it.
Okay.
I then fell into my sick/deathbed, and I'm still there.
Okay.
Speaking of it, do you mind passing me some water, Helen?
Okay, well, I have it. Oh.
Tire very much. Okay, the second item was done. Under C, staff to add weekly call for volunteer help, rules and that's done, I believe.
Yes, that did get done. It went out on the April 24th e-post.
Hey Jim. Council who's joined at 3:09. Helen, under F, thank you.
Yes, under F. Actually, I met with the Historical Society, and they have a... So originally, I think they were thinking of having the memorial garden in Wade. No.
I think Wade
Wade
is
Park,
the latest
yeah.
selection.
And the people who lived there said no, who owned that piece of land or whatever. I don't...
Sorry, isn't
Is
it?
But it's the former Wade house.
Yeah.
So so the Historical Society must have gone, maybe
They've
they went
approached them.
to the Wades
Yeah,
and
and they
said,
said...
you want to share the naming rights?
And they said no. So then the Historical Society identified a second location, which is near the park and ride,
Okay.
down by the underpass. And so they're wondering who owns that piece of land,
MOT.
MOT.
Yeah.
Where? Near the parking lot? It's all brambles over beside them.
Pardon? Where all the bramble is?
So it's where the parking spot where the bus thing is?
So the underpass,
Yeah.
and then just across the street from the underpass, where the cars park.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's in
MOT.
that area.
That's MOT.
That's the
Big-
piece of land that comes up from down below.
Because they're looking for somewhere with low maintenance or no
Yeah.
maintenance.
Okay.
Colville.
Yeah. Everything would slide down the hill, so we don't have too much rain.
Well,
It's pretty steep.
Colville's is more or less from the corner up to the, let's call it where the parking spots are, it's north around. So you're thinking behind the parking spots, which looks kind of like 45 degrees.
Isn't there a little bit of flat land?
And
I don't
there's
know, I
small-
haven't taken a look, but I recall
There's a very
there's a bit.
small, there's a
Is
very
it?
small bit, but it's not very flat, it sort of drops
Yeah.
off almost
Yeah.
immediately.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And
It
that's
was
part of
flat, you
MOT
see
if
beer
it's on the
cans.
That's all
on-ramp.
MOT,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all MOT
But it's on the
property.
other side of the barrier or not.
So if they decided they wanted to contact MOT, are we okay with it?
We wouldn't really have a
Yeah,
say. MOT would set their own parameters on how the space was used.
They probably want our support,
Yeah, that's about all.
that's it.
We'd have to see what was being proposed.
Hmm.
Yeah. I would suggest that MOT will not be very cooperative.
If they say we're gonna put in a little garden?
That's the last thing they want.
That's the last
Yeah.
thing, that's the absolute last thing they'd want.
Okay.
Well, it causes all sorts of problems. You gotta remember that you're on an embankment there, you're on a road that's kind of iffy, the way it's built and the way it's all supported by the stuff going down Alberta Creek, or down the creek, Harvey Creek there. And if the Harvey Creek comes across and goes down like this, all that land is part of that structure that holds the creek in place. And so they won't want anything on there. They won't want even people being there. That's
Want
usually
brambles or-
yeah,
Yeah, they like brambles.
Brambles are
yeah,
good.
keep
Keeps
people away. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll let
But
them
it's
know.
worth the ask. I mean, but
Okay.
yeah, they're going to have to do that. You know, there's not. I guess we can approach them. Let's first see what the proposition is.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to approach them. You don't know what they're gonna say, but the reality is that they're likely just gonna refuse it.
Okay, 8B,
That
that was done. Next was done.
The first one under D, I haven't circulated again because they were circulated back in March, but I can. I meant to. The second one is to research the towing contract. Payless, in fact, will not tow without a ticket on the windshield. So.
Okay. So that needs to be communicated.
Payless will communicate that if a resident phoned and to report a car, that's the first thing they would ask, is what I'm told by their dispatch. So.
Okay, so that only will then happen under bylaw auspices.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And our bylaw officer does start this weekend. So.
Okay, so it's all sort of in play.
So without the ticket, basically, that's the starter pistol, like, they just don't randomly pick
No.
vehicles.
They
so,
won't just pull
okay,
vehicles. Yeah.
There's no proof.
I wonder if we should get back to Mr. Zortigan then, because I think we gave him the instruction
Yeah.
that he could phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Can you handle that, Manny?
Yeah.
And can residents call the bylaw officer so they see a car that's not
Sure.
parked properly? They
Yeah,
can just
and that'll come out in this week's e-post because the bylaw officer starts this weekend. They'll be reporting parameters and how you can get in touch with him and yeah.
Okay, E took place. F is going to take place. G,
Where are we?
that's the best
Yeah, I
one.
haven't got there yet.
Okay, fine. So it'll just carry over, Shauna. Flower pot day.
That happened. Yeah,
Yep,
that's done.
good. And J, did that happen?
Today, yes.
So
It did?
it'll go out this
It'll
week.
go? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that's the action items. Then the action item report on page 9. Is this in addition to?
So this is anything not from the last meeting but older,
Okay,
so that they don't fall off.
good.
So this will be the cleansed up thing. When we see it in the future, it'll,
Yeah, so we'll always have the action items from the minutes because they're the most recent, and then anything older than that will be in this.
Yeah, I like it. That's a good blend of the two. Okay. So the KPI thing, I did send that out, and I did get responses. I will undertake to have for next meeting something to decide on. Is that cool?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so
So should we just add KPI discussion to the next agenda?
Yeah,
Does
would you
that
mind?
suffice? Okay.
you know, I lost 5 days of my life this week, so I'm still trying to catch up on many things I was supposed to have done.
Okay.
I literally was not fit for man or beast. Do we have space in the agenda this coming regular meeting agenda on the bear spot?
I actually think it's on the agenda. It was a
It is?
carry
Okay,
forward,
good. So
wasn't
we'll
it?
we'll
Yes.
defer till then.
Under reports.
Perfect.
Okay, good. Thanks, because I have quite some news there. Okay, and I see that there's a footprint for the shed outside the hall.
The shed's up.
it's up now.
It's up.
The shed's
Okay.
up.
Okay.
Yep, it's quite big. It's as far back as it'll go. Like I said before, if we were going to put it up in the bank like it was discussed, we'd need an engineered pad and a budget for that. So for now, it's at the back of the patio. That's where it will be. But it's
The pad would be quite considerable. That's a big
Yeah.
honking shred.
yeah.
Shed.
So for now, it lives where it lives. At some point, you know, in the future, if we decide on a budget to move it somewhere else to free up the patio, then that's a discussion to have.
It's better than what it used to be,
It is, yeah.
way better.
Yeah, my only concern is it takes up quite a lot of the social space that was originally conceived, but so be it. Okay, fine, so that's taken care of.
Wait, I have a question with regards to that. So are you going to address the various groups with regards to who gets that storage space?
Everybody's going to have to share it, so that's going to have to be the understanding. And I'm going to put shelves in there, because right now it's just an open space. We'll put some shelves in there so the space can be utilized properly. So if somebody only has a tote, it doesn't need to be in the middle of the floor, it can be up on a shelf and that kind of thing. But we're really going to have to rely on the groups to work together to use it. But when we have the shelves in, yes, I will communicate with them.
Okay.
Moving on, unfinished business.
I don't think we have any
I'm not aware of any.
on the agenda, no?
Okay, good.
Remember?
Yes, sir.
Just as because we're thinking a little bit ahead and with the bylaw officer in place on the previous minutes, D, the parking signage at the 3 beaches. Is this something you think might be worthwhile to have a discussion at the next council meeting to flesh out a unanimous council plan on this?
I've actually asked Mark, our bylaw officer, through his travels to make some notes about the really key problem areas, the ones that even though we're ticketing, we're not having an effect, like some of the really key parking issues to kind of form the basis for that discussion. And so.
Yeah, are we discussing parking in the main meeting? Because I saw there was something from...
That's in camera.
That's
Yeah.
something different. That's
Yeah.
something different.
Different.
That's a very specific issue.
I'll mention here that Kenny at the marina asked me to have administration consider. Right now he's been restricted, I think, to 2 days, selling parking tickets for 2 days.
Over the weekend.
Yeah, he says, what about long weekends?
Yeah, so he and I have had this conversation.
Have
So
you?
yeah, we had it last year, and I've just actually crafted a letter to send to him this year, just
Okay.
to
I don't need
remind
to
him
know
where
the
we got
detail.
last year and what the parameters are. So I'll make sure that's in it.
Thanks, I just
Yeah.
saw him this afternoon and he said, hey, one more
Yeah.
thing.
So to this then, so we should put this off for a month or something like that, because then we'll be,
I'd like to put off a little longer, just in light of the fact that we have the annual report coming up.
okay,
So
well, how about if we
Can we
do it with
say-
you to pick a date?
Okay, thank you.
and then we can have a wholesome discussion with data.
okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So to answer your question though, Ron, yeah, I think we probably should at some point, but let's defer until we get some input from the experts. You know, again, I want to be sure that the signage is welcome to Lions Bay, do the following, not don't do the following. In
I'm
general.
also not sure where the residents fit in. I mean, it's not to be somewhat jocular, you can have the Hatfields on one side of the street
Yeah.
and McCoy's on the other,
Yeah.
and they have 2 different views on what parking means.
That's what leadership's all about. So we will find out and decide and do.
And so I think it's somewhere, certainly before school is out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, people are down there now as we speak.
That's June. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to new business. Perfect timing. Welcome. Yeah. So we're ready to go. Where do you want to sit, Bill? Do you have a presentation that you're going to shine, or?
You know, I wasn't that smart to think of that.
Okay, well
We
that's
all
better
have it,
because this
yeah.
is much easier this way.
So we're going to talk financials and audit results. Which one are we going to do first?
Which do you usually do, audit results, I guess, and then financials, or? Do you
Sure.
have a preference, financial statements first and then audit results?
Your
or the
show.
other way around?
You decide.
Let's do.
What order
since
are
I
they
got
in?
my iPad
Yeah.
out, why don't we talk audit? Should I?
Yeah, why don't you
Please
join
do,
us
yeah.
here?
I feel important when I get to sit up here.
Ron,
That's 'cause you
actually,
are.
maybe you want to boost down and we'll get Pam to join up here too, just because she kind of spearheaded.
First guy I've ever seen with an Evernote handbook.
Oh, you know Evernote, that's good.
Yeah. I thought I was the only one in the world.
But you've got one too? It's not here though.
No, it's not here unless it's for my business.
Doesn't count if it's not here. No, it's a great tool. Love it. Maybe we can get a commission if we sell a copy to everybody.
Yeah.
It's only $5 a month. Sorry, I'm digressing here. So you've got a couple of letters from us in the package. The one here, oh, it still says draft on it.
We'll share.
I've got mine on my iPad, so I circled a few things I wanted to talk about. So I was going to spend maybe 7 minutes talking about some highlights in the letter. So this letter just talks about our audit findings. The audit is 99% done. It's not 100% done until council approves the financial statements. That's the last little bit, and then we go away once you approve the financial statements, which might happen soon. We go away and we do a little bit of follow-up we call subsequent events review, which means one more discussion with lawyers. And the point of that is to see if anything's happened since the fiscal year end till the day of financial statement approval. If anything really significant happened, we have to make a note of that in the financial statements. But it has to be quite significant. It's only one time that I can really think of something happening at a client's between the approval date and the statement date, and that was when one of our Crown Corporation clients had a big office, or big housing tower in Richmond that was under construction, burned down like the day after they approved the statement. So something big like that we would have to note. But it's kind of a long way of saying we're almost done. And the results are good. We're going to have a clean audit opinion. I'm flipping through. You don't necessarily need to follow. I'm on page 5 already now. I wanted to talk about materiality. We'll talk about this in the middle of the page here. So our opinion on the financial statements, which we'll see in a second, our opinion says that the financial statements are, in our opinion, are fairly stated. It doesn't say 100% accurately stated, because if we were to do that, we'd have to go back and test every single transaction for the year, which would mean we'd have a team of 6 people here for
a year.
For the year, yeah. So I was okay with that, but Mandy said no. So we set a materiality level. That's our very first job, and the point of that level is to say how far wrong could things be, and we can still sign off a clean audit opinion. This happens in all audits, and the level that we used was $55,000. That's based on a percentage of budget, and that's set by audit standards. There's a little bit of judgment, but it's basically an audit standard that's used in audits of local governments across Canada. So any local government across Canada of your size is audited to about that same level. That's a cumulative level. So as we do the audit, we anytime we have any differences or things we disagree with your staff, the way your staff have recorded things, we put that on our list, and at the end of the audit we have to add it up, make sure it's less than $55,000, then we're good to go. You see that we say here we had a couple of items on the list and they added up to $7,300, so nowhere close to $55,000. And maybe just the last thing I'll mention about materiality is there's some areas where there's no materiality at all. So anything to do with anything that looked to be fraudulent or illegal or a kickback or a councillor expense that didn't look to be supported, any sort of high profile thing like that, there's no materiality, and we would report that to you at this meeting if we came across anything. We have nothing to report, which is good. But actually, from time to time in other local governments, we have had a few things to report, like the time the purchasing agent got a lawnmower from the supplier and he didn't think anything was wrong with it, you know, those kind of things. But nothing here, which is good. On page 7, there is, starting on page 7, there's about 3 pages of little table cells here. I won't go through these in detail, but I want to make sure the concept was understood. And what we're saying here is that the items in these little boxes here, these are what we call the risk areas, which is the left column on each of these. And these are areas where we spent more time on. So there's a lot of numbers in the financial statements, and we spend more time on these areas, less time on the other areas. And the reason for spending more time on these areas is these are areas that are difficult or have estimates involved or great volume of transactions or things like that. So more time in these complicated areas, less time in other areas. I don't think there's value in talking about each one, but I circled one because I wanted to make sure I pointed this one out, because when I read it, our wording sounds pretty interesting. This is on top of page 9, management override of controls. So it says management is in a unique position to perpetrate fraud because of management's ability to directly or indirectly manipulate accounting records and prepare fraudulent financial statements by overriding controls that otherwise appear to be operating effectively. So that was not written specifically because of Mandy and Pam. That is, you can see I put in brackets in the bottom just because that sounds kind of ominous. That is a audit standard requirement that we consider that in any audit engagement. And the reason for that is that you can have the best control systems in the world, but if the people at the top don't have to follow the same controls that everybody else does, the whole thing falls apart. So we have to consider whether people at the top are following everything they should be as well. That's part of our audit plan.
So, Bill, on this,
Go
the
ahead, yes.
separation of duties is, we are a tiny place. So you're satisfied, given that there isn't a vast army of...
Yeah, you're right. It's difficult to, well, you certainly cannot have perfect separation of duties in a small place. You do some things. I think Mandy has some double checks and overrides and things that she does. So, given the number of staff, I think you're okay. I don't want to put words in Pam's mouth, but she's new, and I'm thinking she's probably going to put her own stamp on things, and she may find some areas to change or improve. We'll find
Would it
out.
be appropriate to interject questions during the thing, or do you want to wait till
Please
the
go
end?
ahead, whatever works for you.
So on this, there's two aspects to opportunity for error there. First is fraudulent, and second is just administrative. And so I sit here signing checks on a regular basis. I'm not quite sure why I sign checks, because I'm only signing them on the say-so of staff, saying that it's backed up by what looks to be a genuine invoice, clearly. And the invoice is clearly legit. The thing that concerns me is not whether it's fraudulent, not whether it's in budget or not. But I can only rely on the say-so of Haley, who, through some miraculous means to me, somehow knows whether a given expense is within budget or not. Now, at the beginning of the year, it's all within budget, sure. As you approach the end of the year, I rely on some method that Haley has. But what am I actually attesting to? What is the benefit to having a non-administrative person who has no knowledge of administrative matters, no knowledge of whether it's budgeted or not? There's an accounting code next to it, allocation code. What's the point of me signing checks?
It's that's a great question, and I think we might almost say, to some degree, there's more advantage to somebody not involved in the day-to-day reviewing it, because it does a couple of things. One is the fact that staff know you're going to be reviewing it means they're less likely to. I don't want to use names because I assume nobody here would do anything, but just in general, people are less likely to try and pull something, or, as you said, maybe not even fraud. They're less likely to try and circumvent budget controls when they know somebody's looking at it. Even though you're right, it's difficult for you to look at. But also, it's kind of the continuity of the process. So if you asked Haley if this was within budget, and she said yes, and then we get to the end of the year, and we're at this meeting explaining why water system is over budget, the next time that she tells you that, you're not going to believe her. So you're right, it doesn't necessarily, that particular transaction you're signing off doesn't necessarily solve that one, but it just sort of brings the whole system up a little bit. Certainly you're right, not perfect, definitely not perfect. You would need a staff of 100 people for that. But
Yeah, I always have this issue. What am I actually attesting by signing? And by signing the PO, or signing my initials on the thing saying I've seen it. How do I know if it's legit or not? I have no mechanism for checking it myself.
I think it's just for the for that circle of the staff feedback, because if something pops up later that is not legitimate, you're gonna remember.
Technically, it is a separation of duties too.
Absolutely. And I think, I imagine you already have questioned the odd one that popped up and doesn't seem right. And
Yeah, and that's usually only ever a matter of timing rather than it should have been. I could see that that this would work, except that if I don't sign it, or I'm ill or not here, then somebody else can sign it anyway. So I'm not really providing any check. Cross-check, I mean.
yeah, perhaps more than you think, though.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for it.
Just by having that outside look. Yeah.
Our maze accounting system is what tells us if we're over or under budget and where we're at with those kinds of things. So that's where that check and balance.
I don't know how Haley does it and stays sane, to be honest. But
I never said I was saying.
I heard the word indispensable. And somehow.
Okay, thanks.
Good questions. Thank you. On page 10, I guess I should at least mention this, because this has been the biggest fight in accounting for years. It's accounting, believe it or not, accounting for gas tax monies. You are following the norm, I would say. There's probably about 80. What happened in 2014 is the gas tax. The feds changed the gas tax funding agreement with all the provinces, and as a result of the change, the money is much easier to spend now. There's a lot less strings involved with the money. So most local governments and local government accountants feel that because the money has no strings, you should now bring it directly into revenue. That's what most people are doing. That's what you're doing. There's a vocal minority of people that are saying, well, no, but there's still some strings, even though there's loosened, there's still some, and so there's a few local governments that are deferring it. Big picture doesn't really matter. The fact is you get the money, you can spend it on these eligible projects. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it's very exciting in the accounting world, so I thought
I suggest that you raise your materiality limit to $54,000 and you'll solve the problem.
Defer with the purpose of what?
This is the way it used to account. You used to account for it. It went on your books as a liability, and then when you spent it on an eligible project, then the money came out to fund that eligible.
So you actually had to do the road work to do, theoretically.
Yeah.
So okay.
You're
Okay.
right. You're right. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it makes us accountants very excited to have this.
Yeah.
This
Well, there's
price.
a lot of sizzle in that, Bill.
Oh, we had street
We went back and
walls
forth a few times on the
Oh,
audit.
yeah,
It was, we went 3 times, didn't we, before it had its final resting place?
But yeah. So not that we want to kill this to death, but I think that's a good reminder that these are your financial statements. So what we did is we talked to Pam and Haley and said, here's what's going on, here's the street fights that have been happening, and what do you feel is the best accounting position for the village? And they came up with their best accounting decision for the village. So I always like to remind people it's not the auditors that get to choose the accounting policies. Just a couple more things. Page 12, we have a little section called fraud discussion. We have to, it's a requirement that we ask members of council and management who we've already asked whether they're aware of any fraud or illegal acts that have gone on during the year, or if they have any concerns about a high risk of possibility of fraud or illegal acts. If so, we need to know, and you can tell us now, or my email address is in this document. You can email me later if you have concerns. We're not aware of anything that we've heard from management or others, but it is something we have to actually ask every year. And I think that's probably it. We have we have our draft audit report in here. But we probably don't need to go through the detail here. Appendix C, which is page 18. And I said that we had come across some differences that added up to $7,300. These are the items here. There's nothing here that causes us great concern. Oh, maybe that wasn't in.
It ends at 17 when we go to the statement.
Oh, okay. It didn't get printed up for some reason, but anyway.
Oh, actually it is. It's on page 8. Oh, you know what? The financial statements have different numbers, so skip over the financial statements and then you come to page 18.
Oh,
Because we inserted our financial statements. And we didn't have the continuity of the numbering, sorry.
There it is, yeah.
There it is.
I can see you reviewed and signed up. I'm not going to go through the detail of those. Those are all relatively minor items and nothing that's indicating sloppiness or any concerns like that. So we have to bring those forward, but I don't have any concern. We always find a couple of things in any audit usually. I think that is all I needed to point out. The last page in here, page 24, says management letter points in process. Management letter are recommendations that we write to management, and we actually have a separate letter. Was that probably wasn't in the package, was it?
Yes, it's going on table in the closed portion of the meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something we can talk about later. So that covers the high level audit results, and as I say, at the end of the day, clean audit opinion. Perfect cooperation from staff. We had access to all the information that we needed, and nothing that makes us cranky.
Can I just ask you about the one number, the amortization on capital assets, $10,000? That's, I mean, that's a significant number for us. Was that just a restatement of amortization periods, or what?
I can speak to that,
Yeah.
the
Oh, sure,
amortization.
go ahead.
We have detailed PCA schedules that calculates the amortization. And when we took a closer look during the audit, we discovered that there was just a couple of errors in the spreadsheet. There were just some formulas. It's a massive spreadsheet, and there was just 4 lines. So
Okay,
we
good. So
caught
it's a
that and
correction.
corrected. It's a correction,
It's
and
not
then we've just
It's not something we forgot before.
no. It was just a correction that we over amortized some assets.
Good thing you remember, because I have forgotten.
And I've got 2 questions. One, the fire department bank account. Is the separation fine enough there, in your view?
That's something we have in our
To-do list?
our letter to talk about in more detail. So
And the
I think
closed
we,
meeting.
I think we'd like to see some change there.
Okay.
But that's going to take place a little later.
That'll be in
We'll
the
leave
closed
the-
meeting.
It's in the
this
closed
afternoon.
We'll leave that at that then.
Okay, good.
So will all these points be in the closed meeting or just a few?
Yeah, our full letters in the closed
Okay.
meeting. I don't know if those are points that we started to follow up. I don't think they're all in our final letter, because as we did more research, we may
How many are
have
on
fully
the list,
some.
Tom? How many are on that list?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8.
Not all of
Okay, but these are all going to be discussed coming up.
them. Not all of them, but everything that's in the management letter. and that.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I think all of these actually
page
did make
24 will
it
get the separate letter.
to the final letter.
Oh, they did, okay.
Ron, you said you had one more?
I guess it's a more global one. Thank you, Mayor Burr. Bill, I think you deal with approximately 23 or 26 municipalities.
Oh, good memory.
Thereabouts. Did your CB before I came in. How do we stack up? We're tiny. This is my view. I think with our small number of folks, all appear to be either longer term, and so the corporate history is there. Our systems are in place. We've now had happily a couple of years of CAs and CPAs in place, so we've upgraded our professional stuff. Can you confirm that we're getting certainly in the upper quartile?
Yeah, I think you're definitely going in the right direction. You're quite right. There was,
A darker period.
staff that were trying but not qualified. Maybe had too much on their plate. I'm not sure. So I think there has been lots of good change. We know your new CFO official title.
CFO, yes.
So we know your new CFO from her past work, and I think that's a good hire. So head in the right direction for sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I had one thing, Bill. I'm concerned. Are you concerned about the lack of financial statements? The last, not audited, but issued financial statements were for the 3rd quarter, and it's now early May. Is this something you are concerned about in a municipal sense, or I mean, certainly in a business sense, I'd be raving. I'd be closing the doors until we had them. But this is not that kind of situation. What's your advice there?
Good point. I agree with your thoughts. It seems to be very common in local government. I don't know why that is. There's quarterly reporting, and then with the 4th quarter, because the year end is going to be finalized and lots of adjustments often, and capital funding is figured out. It seems that most seem to wait and not do the 4th quarter and then do the final statement now, like we're doing today. So that does seem to be common. I agree with you. It's probably not ideal because we're a long way from December 31st.
Well, we haven't even
A
seen
long way
December
from
30th.
September the 30th.
Yeah, we've seen the 3rd quarter. Yeah.
Even better. So I think you're right. It would be good practice to do a December statement and tell council that these are likely going to change a little bit when the year end is done, but that would be a good.
It's different to business because it's very steady operations. You know, nothing. There's no sort of market forces, competitive action. You know, it's not like, I hesitate to call it the real world, but it's not like the outside world. So, do we actually need a December and a March statement, or can we wait until the audit statement and then get a June statement, a September statement, and what do you see?
Well, as I said, most people don't seem to do that December statement until they do their final.
What about in March?
March usually seems to get done late because they're spending the time on the other statements. I agree with you, it's pretty predictable. I still, this is just me personally, I still think there's some value, you know, councils want to be open and transparent, and I think there's value in having that seen. Even though you could say, well, it's consistent with budget and don't worry, I still think there's value in actually seeing a piece of paper that says that.
Mm.
That's kind of my personal view.
Yeah, I would love to have a BBA in case we're spinning too fast or too slow for that matter. Yeah, okay, so that's something that we will be addressing. It's not so much a scorecard like it is in business, but it is prudent presentation and management of the public purse. So, okay,
I would agree.
Yeah, so you're even more vehement, vehement's not the right word, but more...
No, we only get vehement when we talk about gas tax.
I saw that.
Sizzle. Up Mayor Burr's question now, which you didn't answer. In terms of the universality of other municipalities, what is the frequency of quarterly statements?
Oh, sorry, I guess I wasn't clear. I would say it's a minority that are doing the December quarterlies.
Well,
because they are waiting.
Buy into the year end.
Because they're waiting for the year end.
So first quarter, and then you had 45 days, or like in the middle of next week. But I mean, I see the logistical problems because the staff is finalizing. Okay, so for sure June and for sure September and something in the other 2 quarters.
So I would say I don't think you're currently kind of offside the norm.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm not sure the norm is the best thing.
Okay, good.
Anyone else? Okay. That's great. Thanks, Bill. I think you're going to be talking more, so you may as well just stay right where you are. We'll move on to public questions and comments. And seeing none, we'll now go to 9, which is resolution to close the meeting. So I'll read the resolution to close the meeting of the May 5th Council Strategy Committee to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the Community Charter 91. A part of the meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to one or more of the following: C. Labour relations or other employee relations, and L. Discussions with municipal officers and employees regarding municipal objectives and measures, progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98. Can I have a motion and a second? Great, thanks. Discussion, seeing none, all in favour, opposed, seeing none, carries. So, Mandy, can you just read into the minutes what we are going to report?
We're not going to report anything out of the closed session.
Okay, thank you. And so...
But we will need to revert now back to 7A, which is the audit report, so we can discuss the financial statements.
Yeah, so Bill, what page?
How's the numbering in the agenda?
So it would be 17 starts on a statement.
It's between your 17 and 18. Do you? Oh, it's you have the.
I of course have mine.
You've got the thing. Okay, so we're on the same page.
I just want to make sure I'm referring to the right page. Well, maybe I'll just speak to a couple of highlights on it.
Yes.
Pam and Haley will know all the details because Haley certainly has every single transaction memorized, which is good. I'm going to give you probably the 10-minute overview because I have to go to Prince George soon. So
Are they more exciting than us?
No, they're not nearly as exciting.
The mind boggles.
A couple pages in, there's our draft audit report. I mentioned that in the other earlier letter that
Page 31 and 56.
30.
I'm really in the meat.
Oh, okay, there we go. 30. Yes, I just want to mention it again. It's going to be a clean audit opinion. The page after that, statement of financial position. This is a snapshot of your results at the end of the year. Bottom line of the page. So this does not look anything like a private company balance sheet, which many of you will have seen. It doesn't actually balance anything for one reason.
There's a plug number.
It comes down to one number called accumulated surplus, and this goes back to our talk about, for accounting purposes, everything gets mushed together, and obviously, you, as we spent some time talking about, you need to make sure you're internally accounting for debt funds and reserve funds and fire department donation funds, all those good things. For accounting purposes, we kind of don't care, but it is important internally that you do all that. The takeaway, the wording that is used is in these statements follows the Public Sector Accounting Board standards, and we have to use this term accumulated surplus, which I think is a very unfortunate wording, because this says there's accumulated surplus of $20,088,090. So it sounds like there's tons of cash sitting around, but there isn't. I think we talked about that before. The vast majority of that is spent on infrastructure and is not available. Probably the more important line on that page is 2/3 of the way down the page, net financial assets brackets debt, because that number represents what would happen if you cashed in on your cash and things that turn into cash. We call those financial assets at the top of the page, and you subtracted all your liabilities. What would you have left over? This year you would actually be in a minus position, a minus $171,000. So we call that a net debt position. That so being in a minus position is not the end of the world. Probably just guessing, maybe anywhere from 30 to 40% of local governments in BC would be in a minus position. You often get into a minus position when you do a lot of infrastructure refresh, because what you're doing is you're investing in the future, and you're spending some money on infrastructure. You're in a minus position, so you've got to recoup that in the future over future tax rates and things like that. So it's not the end of the world to be in a minus position. You just have to have a plan for how to get out of a minus position. $170,000 is not huge. That's where you are. And of course, you did spend, what's the number? I think it's over $1 million on. Yeah, you spent $1,043,000 on capital assets during the year. So that's a big chunk of money, big chunk of resources to spend, which gets you into that minus position on the.
That's gross, right? That's not net drawn reserves. That's including grant funding.
Yeah, that's the total spend.
Yeah. The AP and AR, are you comfortable with those numbers? Those relative to revenue, relative to something?
Yes. So one of the AP in particular, that's what you owe suppliers at the end of the year. One of our focuses, is that a word? I don't know. Is to make sure that things are falling in the right budget year. There's always a concern with government, not particularly to your staff, but just in government in general, that, you know, if we're getting near the end of the year and we're out of budget, well, we'll just call that a 2015 item, or the opposite, we have budget left over, so let's pull some invoices in and use up our budget for this year. So it's always a concern of ours to make sure that that cutoff is accurate, and accounts payable is the big ticket item there. So yes, we do spend some time, and we're comfortable with that number. So that was kind of my big picture look at financial position. Pam, anything you wanted to point out?
No, it was just the net debt, so I'm glad you addressed that. Yeah.
Page after that is statement of operations. So this is your results for the year. 3 columns here, budget column first, actual in the middle, and then the 2013 on the right. So, a couple things to, that I circled here to talk about. One is that you had an overall surplus for the year of $314,000, so it's a little, can be a little hard to wrap your head around. We just talked about how you're in this minus $171,000 financial position, but you're in a surplus position of $314,000 for the year. And the reason for that is that capital spending is not expense for accounting purposes. When you spend it, it's written off over its useful life. So even though $1 million went out the door, it's not an expense in here. This very small portion of the amortization portion of that is. So that can make it a little difficult to understand sometimes how it all ties together. Under the revenues there, I circled the government transfers, $733,000, a lot higher than the previous year, partially due to gas tax and the money. Where would the money come from for the
age-friendly grant?
Grant, yeah. Yeah. What's it called? Accessibility.
The accessibility grant.
Accessibility grant.
I think we also brought into income $440,000 from deferred revenue, which had been a grant for the community center.
Right. So that grant had been deferred and was recognized this year when it was spent. And other revenues were considerably higher than budget, $143,000 versus $66,000 budget. I was thinking that you usually try and budget fairly conservatively, but I forgot the exact reason why that's higher, but I knew Haley would know the answer.
Donations are in there, I believe, which we don't budget for. I think that was 27,000, if I remember correctly, Pam, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Building permits were higher than budgeted, and the highway call-outs were also higher than budgeted.
Long may it last.
Then the way the expenses are presented here are very summarized. There is some more detail later in the statements, but on this statement they're just supposed to summarize the key service areas. So you've got general water, sewer, general below budget, sewer below budget, water a little bit over $50,000 over budget. But the other one's in line.
That's concerning, right? It means that we either didn't do what we planned, or we under or over planned. But
in water?
Oh, and anything, just in general.
There was $100,000 that we budgeted for a contingency in general that we haven't spent. That's gone there. So that was $100,000.
And the water overage? I've forgotten what it was.
Yeah, you're right about the contingency. That actually means
that's the most of it.
we actually spent 70 more than we planned. Take that out.
The water would have to go up, to be honest.
Well, I suspect some of that was emergency repairs that we couldn't pep eyes. It is what it is. It's more a case of avoiding surprises. We try and be pretty conservative on budgeting. On the other hand, we need to know what we need so that we can tax fairly. It's difficult.
Lots of pages after that. Yeah. They're really kind of like
government nonsense
for accountants that want to read all this stuff. Accounting policies. There's no real change to accounting policies. The notes start on page 11 on the bottom. I don't know what that is.
3956.
39 to 56. I don't think there's any surprises here too. That note 1 mentions the use of those grant funds that Pam mentioned earlier, so it just shows a little continuity of they were sitting there, they were brought into revenue this year. Yeah, I don't. Oh, maybe the only other note I circled was note 11. Expenses by object. This is a required disclosure, so we slice it on the statement of operations. We slice it by functional area, and we also have to disclose by type here. So we have goods and services, labor, debt charge, amortization. So that's usually good information there. It shows how your labor costs, for example, change from year to year. So that's usually a good note to read. So I think that's probably the highlights. Did I leave anything out in my haste to get to Prince Road?
Nope. I think that's about it. And if you think of any other questions, you can just email me. And I can.
Well, I've just got one quick one.
Sure.
It's chicken feed, really. I'm on page 4156, the taxation for the regional district. The amount we took in is different than the amount that we transferred to them. And was there a reason for that, or?
Yeah, when the budget was done, the charges for this thing called the geospatial GIS mapping thing, and that got been missed from our budget in 2013. Or when we did
Yeah, it's just a small amount, and it was difference between the budget.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just expecting a straight pass.
Yeah, I was too when I was doing the note, but then.
Yeah. That's the worst I can come up with.
That cruiser read it right to the end, though. That's good.
I did, and I slept all night.
Sorry, this is not me.
Sorry.
Baseball game, I can't get in the box, so I'm sure it's something.
Actually, if you had to go, if there's any other questions, I could probably answer them if you have to.
Yeah, I should probably
Yes.
hit the highway.
You're going to drive?
Okay. I'll drive to the airport, yes.
So you got a long drive ahead of you otherwise.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Very kind of you to take the trouble.
My favorite place to come.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, especially on a
Drive's
day
so
like
nice,
today.
yeah.
In the cheap part of the world where I live in Port Coquitlam, it's raining all day. So,
It's funny because when you come through the bridge, coming from the east to the west, come through the tunnel, Cassiar Tunnel, it's pissing down rain in Burnaby. Come out the other side, north on this side, and it's just sun, skies clearing, really nice.
Got to get something for all those high taxes we pay.
thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheerio.
Pam, I have a quick question. Are
Sure.
we eligible for any pension plan? Councilman, I don't know.
No.
I have no
No,
pension.
that's a short answer.
You know, I have
There's a
like
longer answer.
absolutely no pension
No.
in Canada. I'm like big trouble when I.
Maybe you will be holding that out till we're fest.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's wiggle room.
So we will. We reverted back to 7, so now we are at 11. Is that correct, Manny?
Yes.
And I'll have a motion to adjourn, please. Second. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Oh no, we don't do it again. Can we change that in the procedures bylaw? So I don't have to keep remembering. Sorry, no motion. Meeting adjourned.